And you guys are going to do like 10 minutes of talking, and I'm just sitting here doing that.
Yeah,
That's
so
correct.
you'll be, I guess you'll be muted. I always feel bad.
No, it's all good.
But I kind of like it also. I like.
Caitlin, just so you're aware, we are technically live, so
We're on YouTube now?
Yeah.
This is our YouTube debut?
It is, yeah. I'll do like an actual intro in just a few more minutes, but I can see I have a little window where I can make sure that's actually going across right now, which it is, which is exciting. It is, yeah. I'll do like we can listen ourselves. Oh, we're in a fucking loop.
Echo.
Okay.
Classic first.
And then let me go my link on my Instagram so I can make sure. Shaw, I apologize. Usually we're a little bit more, but this is our first time doing it.
We literally switched platforms tonight. This is our new thing. But hopefully we can be doing video more.
Oh my gosh, I'm watching ourselves on my phone. How exciting.
Oh God.
All right.
Oh God. Yearbook bio.
So anyways, yeah, I think I overheard you guys talking about, but yeah, Shaw will mute you. We'll kind of do our own thing, and then we'll intro you, and then we'll get into some questions, into some games.
Cool.
Perfect. Before we mute you, is there any questions you had or anything?
No, I don't got anything.
All right. We'll see you soon. Oh, my goodness. Caitlin, we are officially live on YouTube. How's that feel?
Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. I'm sorry. Can you swear on YouTube?
Yeah, you have to, like, there's something where you can click where it's very weird. The way it, like, asks is very specifically, like, is this appropriate for children? Like, it doesn't ask, like, full on, like, the way it words is very weird. Like, can children watch your show? And I was like, no.
Oh, no, it asks if it's specifically marketed towards children,
Oh,
I think.
yeah, I think you're right. That is what it asked me. And I said, hell no.
Thank you.
Marketed towards adults after hours.
Yeah,
beings.
no. Please, if you are listening to this and you have a child with you, just don't.
Just don't. That's like the DARE campaign.
Yeah, I don't know. There will be maybe we can produce that kind of content one day, but we're not. That's not what this is.
Hell no. It certainly ain't, sister.
Sister. No. Yeah, Eric, why don't you start with your daddy issues and then I'll go into mine. And then
please, this is not the, as we keep talking about this is not our 4-hour Father's Day episode extravaganza next year. 2021. Get into it, guys. It's going to be incredible.
You mean our dad stravaganza.
Get it. All right, Caitlin, you ready to do this for realsies?
Yesterday was my dad's birthday.
Papa, can you hear me?
Dad, are you listening? Call me. Tonight we have a really serious guest.
Oh shit.
And I just think that it's very serious.
All right,
so
let's send it out. Let me do a true intro. All right? You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready, Eric.
All right. Good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Goth Yearbook After Hours, live via YouTube. Oh my goodness, it is I, your host as always, Eric, aka the Eric Wynn, and with us as always is that hostess with that mostest, Caitlin, aka the Caitlin D. Caitlin, how's your YouTubing?
It's live streaming.
You know what's funny is I can see like a meter that shows like how many people are listening, and it like went down immediately the second I actually started talking. You saw like it just immediately people were like, "Ooh, get the fuck out of here," whatever this is. Nah,
it's like, honestly though, like that's what it's like when you're playing at like a bar or something, and like you can just see whether or not people are into you or not.
Just like a real quick,
straight up, just looking at you with like the side eye and then leaving, like putting down their full drinks and just getting out of the bar, being like, I cannot listen to one more moment of this bitch screaming about her ex-boyfriend.
I like it. Well, how's your day been?
super super great.
Yeah.
We're recording this right after
An incredible, like, we did like a kind of like a little musical set for like an hour before this.
I was gonna reference the final presidential debate. But we also during that to be clear, we were recording musical numbers because Eric looks a lot for the listener at home. Eric has a fresh cut. He's got his Rick Moranis glasses on.
That's
and
right.
Before the show, he was furiously scrubbing at a briefcase. So I immediately started singing from Little Shop of Horrors, and I did several numbers of that. Hopefully those will be streaming at some point somewhere because I think they were all recorded. And for most of them, Eric wasn't listening because he was just furiously scrubbing his gaze.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I'll be very excited to go back into that Zoom video, cut all those up, and post those all over the Instagram for the promo.
Down on Skid Row. Down on Skid Row. And then I went into a little bit of Feed Me, I think. But whatever the song is before that, when he's like trying to figure out what the plant eats.
Yeah, which is blood.
It's blood.
Speaking of bloodthirsty beasts out there, did you watch the presidential debate this evening?
No.
Topical humor. I didn't either. I watched the first one. I watched the vice presidential one. I did not have any bit of anything inside me that wanted to watch tonight's. It's not like I'm going to be swayed on anything. This, you know.
Right. It is like a bit of like Roman gladiator shit at this point.
It's
like
this might sound like very, I don't know, naive, whatever, but to me, this one in particular, like this second one between the two of them, feels like it's just to serve like tomorrow morning's like clickbaits across the internet and all that. Like, did you see what happened? And when he said this thing, and like what is going to be turned into a meme, and what will be like the headline on CNN and on Fox News on this and that. And I get it. I know. I kind of get what they're both about at this point. I don't need to see really any more of them talking to each other. So, but
yeah, no, we should all just drink ourselves to sleep and then wake up and then turn the wheel of the American dollar and then come home and drink ourselves to sleep and then wake up the next day and do it all again and then on Saturday it's fucking rock and roll, baby.
I get it, 'cause right now I am a true fucking cog in the machine. You know what I mean? You'll enjoy this, Caitlin.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, I haven't had like any. This is without getting too much deep into the shit and revealing too much about like what I do for a day job and all that. It is my busy time of year. I work like adjacent to the and right now
he's a daytime.
Yeah, I do the like 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
mostly
shift.
holiday season stripper.
It's a busy. I work adjacent to the construction industry, and it's our busy time of year. And my boss, I haven't been able to like. I'm one of the managers at this place, one of the general managers, and I haven't been able to like leave because if there's only like 3 of us that are managers there, and like the other 2 are gone, the other one can't. And my boss like had to like run to do a family emergency, but he knew like I was going on like day 4 of like no break, and he's like, fuck, like Eric, you need to like get out of here. I can see it on your face. He's like. He was like, you know what, like, and mind you, today was like fucking like 95 degrees outside. He's like, why don't you like just, I don't know, like go for a walk around the block? Like you should go walk down to the animal shelter. And I never felt like, I never felt more like unseen in my, like, I've never been less seen in my entire life. You know.
Was he trying to hurt your feelings? Like,
I don't know. It was so funny too, because it was like, I can tell you right now, like, you know me, I have like fucking chickens, cats, dogs. I got all sorts of animals, but the last thing I'm fucking doing is taking a walk.
You're Dr. fucking Doolittle.
Last thing I'm going to do is take a fucking walk in the middle of the day for like 10 minutes down to the animal shelter. Like,
where you would just get a dog.
I honestly looked at him and I was like, no. Like, I'll just sit here. Like, I'd rather not. It's all good.
That's literally how we got every animal in my family. I grew up with like 4 cats and 5 dogs, like so many animals, and a turtle and a fish and mice and rats and birds and all kinds of shit. And it's because my mom would like, every time we had a birthday or so, like Easter or like
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, she would like take us to the animal shelter and be like, look at this one. And we'd be like, yeah. And then forever when she would tell the story about how we got the animal, she would be like, yeah, it was Kate's birthday and she really wanted this dog. And
Oh, she'd really lay into like
you took me to a shelter on
Yeah.
my birthday.
trying to like
I don't
if
know.
there's any fucked up thing with the animals. Like I don't know, Caitlin is calling all the shots in our household. Like
I'm 11.
yeah, I actually you're I can't believe like this is just occurring to me and you're gonna laugh, but I did just get a text from someone right before showtime who sent me a picture of a little kitten and said, "Can we please get him?" And I said yes. So we have another one coming
You're
into the
getting
house.
a kitten? Oh my God. Goth Yearbook history right
Yeah,
now.
Goth
Aw.
Yearbook exclusive, short
Wait
for the
a
word
minute.
exclusive.
Wait a minute. We have to put. I want to see a photo like immediately. I need to see a photo like. I can't believe you just told me this. I'm like actually kind of upset because we've
This-
been setting up this equipment for a couple hours.
No, this happened. I'm telling you, like when our guest came into the room, like I was getting a text about it, like a request, like I promise, like I'll.
How
take care-
little?
I'm about to show you right now. Why don't
But
you?
for the listener at home, why don't you say how little, like how many weeks old or how many whatever?
Oh, I wasn't told, but by the picture that I'm about to send us, he looks like he's fucking like barely been born. Like he looks fresh from the fucking womb.
No, where's the mom? Because you can't take him that young. What's going on? What's
I don't
happening?
know. For all I know, he's
No,
like
Eric,
8
we
years
don't-
old. Why do you gotta take it to this like
It's
dark ass place? Like,
it's like-
why is
it's
it being taken from its mom? Like, goddamn. Okay. I just sent the email to you, Caitlin, to our Goth Yearbook
Okay,
email.
great. We'll post it. I don't
Yeah.
know on the Goth Yearbook Instagram. We don't have a Facebook.
No, we don't. We barely have a Twitter. But we have a strong, solid Instagram that gets posted on at least every other day. So we are on top of it, folks. And now we have this YouTube channel.
Hey,
We've come so far.
look, I'm doing the why for YouTube.
Looks like we made it. Look how far we've come now, baby. Hell yeah. All right, before we get to the guests, should we get to some announcements?
Yeah. Do
So
Oh,
this
I'm supposed to
Sunday,
do them?
we're very excited. This Sunday is going to be the big Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark episode with the Keep It Weird ladies, Ashley and Lauren. Very exciting. So those are
Yes.
iconic books. If you didn't grow up with them, you probably you're a little too comfortable in life. You should have had a
You're
little bit of that
probably
trauma.
just not 35.
Yeah. If you have a favorite story, a memory of those books or anything, please call into the hotline, 707-335-8032. Again, that's 707-335-8032. They got the Yearbook hot line. And we got next Thursday our big Halloween extravaganza episode. We are going to have so many guests, former guests, friends, family of the show. So tune in. I can't give away too much because it's just, we got a lot of exciting stuff. But the one thing I do want to announce is we do have a giveaway that's going to be happening. I still have some secret people who are donating to it, actually. So I'll have a real post for it tomorrow afternoon. But for the time being, just know that we are giving away a little bit of a Goth Yearbook bundle package, Halloween giveaway sort of thing. And the only way to get yourself drawn into this thing is to go onto Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show, and then send us a DM. Send us like picture proof somehow to the Instagram at Goth Yearbook. Let us know. Let's see, so that way you can be entered into this drawing. Otherwise, I think that's all I got. So without further ado, Caitlin, why don't you intro this guest?
Tonight, we are joined by Shah Selbe, who is an engineer, a conservation technologist, and a National Geographic explorer. And I am particularly interested in his work because he's basically merging technologies that are often used for purposes that are stupid for things in the conservation field, which is not stupid and in fact probably incredibly necessary for our continued habitation of this planet. So, with no further ado, I welcome our guest tonight, Shah Selbe. Welcome.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to ask him about mute. Oh, blunder, classic. Classic Eric blunder. I know. We're so smooth up into this moment. Shaw, I'm so sorry, buddy. Let's pretend like that was smooth as all jam. Oh my god.
Yeah, hey, it's good to be here tonight.
So, yeah, here we are amidst all kinds of wreckage of human society in America at this time, and I try to keep in mind to a certain extent, like, yeah, people are listening to these episodes live, but also people will be listening to them in the future. So for a little bit of context, tonight is like literally the final presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And we're going into like November, the election, and COVID's raging. And meanwhile, our environment has been in catastrophe. There's so much to be like really, really negative about. But what's interesting about what you do for a living is it works in this very like like you kind of have to believe in that there's a future of
I mean, you can't work in conservation and not be optimistic. Otherwise you just be like, the forests are burning all the time, and just like, what are you going to do about it, right? Like, you just be depressed.
Yes, so, exactly. So what I really want to ask you tonight is how do you do that?
Yeah, like, teach us.
yeah I mean, I think it's hard. It for sure is hard. So like, one thing is, when I try to talk about the stuff that I do, I try not to be like super depressing all the time, because it's like, I mean, if you want to like find depressing when it comes to the environment, it's super easy to find, it's all over the place. But like, we have had successes, and we do know more about conservation and environmental protection than we've ever known before. Like, you hear there was an environmental justice question in this debate tonight, which is the first time that's ever happened, and so that's kind of cool. So like, things are changing, and there's always work to do. So like so you have to kind of stay positive about that. Plus, like, the work that I do gives me the opportunity to go to some pretty like fucking amazing places, and so like, that's always a nice reminder, because I get to be like surrounded by elephants or whales and shit like that.
Right, like actually be in the middle of nature and not just all these buildups around nature. It's funny because sometimes I'll go to like smaller towns and I'll sort of witness how like you fly like from the sky and then you like land in this city, and you can actually see from up high like when it becomes human world, and then maybe sometimes you'll land there and then you'll drive far out, so you're kind of in the mountains, and then you sort of see like the backdrop of it. And anytime I've done that, when I come home, I start to see like the landscape around me, instead of just like being the world, like being sort of placed in this landscape of the world, and that's probably just me being kind of stoned.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, like sometimes when I'll be out in the field, because I mean, I haven't gone out in the field since COVID started. But before, like, I'll go out for like a month or something. I'll be out in the middle of nowhere with no communications. It's just like me in the middle of a jungle or something like that. And then, coming back, it's always this like huge shelter shock. Like, I mean, you see everything around you. You're like, this feels weird. It does not feel normal. I mean, there was a couple of years where I was doing a lot of work in Botswana, and we'd fly over this parts of Botswana and be like, the opening sequence of The Lion King, you're just like, feeling like you're in this like super pristine place. And then to get out of there, we fly into Johannesburg, which is just kind of like this barren, not particularly attractive city, that's, has all its issues that big major cities have. And it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But, then when you're in back in civilization, there's things like beer and hamburgers and stuff like that, so that makes it better.
And like hot showers and
yeah.
beds that don't have bugs in them, and yeah.
Did you out of curiosity, this is going to sound so random, but it's just on my mind because Kayla and I were talking about this right before we recorded, but were you in the Boy Scouts by chance?
I actually was, but I didn't go very far in it. I was just like a couple of years.
Gotcha. Yeah, I the reason why I asked is because one of
The
the
reason he asks is because he will use
any excuse. No.
any excuse to talk about
Oh,
being
you.
the
Oh,
voice.
you. No, because one of the merit badges is the wilderness survival merit badge, which
Oh,
involves
nice.
like you have to actually like in order to get it, it's one of your like Eagle required ones too, and you have to like spend the night alone, like deep in the woods, quote unquote deep, like in just a couple miles, whatever. But I was
Yeah.
wondering if that's like if you had experience with that. Like, was that were you before you even got into this career, like when you were in your teenage years, were you one who liked to kind of go out deep into the wilderness a lot? Like, did you enjoy a lot
Not
isolation like that,
I
or?
I mean yeah, but like not like I wouldn't say I was any different than any other normal person. Like I thought hiking was cool and like going to national parks was cool and stuff like that. But like it wasn't until and then I went to school for engineering, so that's not really kind of a type of field you would imagine you would think about like adventure and
Yeah,
nature and things like that, right?
right.
You weren't studying like
Um,
biology, like
yeah, I mean,
the
I was
invention of.
just straight hard engineering. So I actually never even took a biology course in my entire like school career or whatever, and I came into this like through like grad school. I just got on some random project with a nonprofit, and they were looking at that time that they were looking at like the issues that were happening around like overfishing and illegal fishing, and I started learning more and more about it. I'm like, holy shit, we're like destroying the oceans,
Yeah.
like there has
Mm.
to be something we can do about it. And at that time I found myself in like these meetings with like, environmental lawyers and biologists, and I was like the only engineer in the room, and like they would talk about these problems and I'd be like, I think FedEx like solved this like problem like 10 years ago, or like,
Right.
have you ever thought about using this thing for that, or like, and it just felt like there was like an opportunity for me to take like the things that I knew and like try and make us better at like at conservation and stuff like that. So I kind of jumped in.
That's really awesome. I mean, because engineers at heart are problem solvers essentially, and I think a lot of like environmentalists, for lack of a better word, are just problem warriors, so to speak. And so, like, that's a good marriage.
Documenters,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
like, that's a good marriage. I think that's like a good. I think that's such a valuable source to have for them to have someone like you, an engineer, someone who kind of your mind, I have to assume, naturally works towards like creating solutions and finding, whether inventive or ones that you've seen work well in other areas and bringing them to those different arenas, so to speak.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, and it's something that the people who are working out in these areas get pretty stoked about because, like tech is everywhere nowadays
Mm-hmm.
and they use it in their personal life, but they've never really thought about using it like professionally. And so that's a lot of the stuff that I do is like how we can kind of reimagine the way that they're doing their work and like bring in new technologies or like build smartphone apps or do all sorts of kind of random stuff. And it's fun.
I dig it. So the other thing I have to ask then, where in this mix is the rocket scientist aspect?
Yeah.
Because
So
where does that fit into all this? Because
Well,
now,
I had a bit of a pointed question towards that. So,
sure.
you did previously work for NASA, right?
No, I worked for Boeing, but I
For
worked
Boeing
on NASA projects. Yeah.
on NASA projects. Okay, so but my basic question, like, with the general, like, so you working on problems of going up into space, for instance, right?
Yeah.
How did that change your or how does that play into, I guess, your perspective of like your work here on Earth, or like how does it play, like what is that dynamic for you? And because I know there's people that are interested in space exploration that are also like kind of like, let's get the fuck out of here, but also
Yeah.
and I get that, but I'm also like, wouldn't it be a lot easier to like
Yeah. Well, I mean, stupid. Like we have a perfectly good planet. Why are we just gonna like leave it? Why? Let's just fuck this thing up and then like take off. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But
right, it's a bit of that, like, you move and you bring your problems with you.
right,
right.
we're
Like
gonna mess up the next one. Right.
it works the same with like your sister or nephew as it does with like the people leaving planet Earth.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you're just gonna fuck it up again. Like, so fix what you got going on. So how does that change the way you approach your work? Is kind of what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like similarities. Like the main difference. So I that was actually the first job that I got out of college was this was a spacecraft propulsion engineer. So I worked on like satellites, basically all kinds of kind of communications or science satellites that and the ones that I worked on were like the big kind of super expensive ones. So like $500 million satellites. Satellites that like the government of Mexico bought and things like that. And we would I was I worked my way up to being in charge of a bunch of them from a propulsion standpoint, just all the rocket engines and tanks and all that sort of stuff. And then I ended up working a bunch of launches. So like I was, in mission control with like the headset saying like,
that's so sick.
Propulsions go for launch, and they do the countdown and so I did that for 12 satellites that are actually still orbiting Earth right now, which is kind of cool.
How many people work on that? Like, what is how big is that team that works on like a $500 million satellite?
It's like hundreds, sometimes even thousands. Like it's a lot of people, depending on how big the project is.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, like for the propulsion side of things, it'd be a handful of people, maybe like 4 or something like that. And then you have the engineers, you have the technicians, the people who actually build things on the floor, and then quality that tests everything, making sure everything works. And so there's all these different roles. And so to answer your question, Caitlin, like what I brought from that job was one was like what the difference is the fact that everything that I work on now is meant to be kind of accessible to everybody. Like we're going to places in South America or like Africa or Asia, working with communities and people who can't, obviously don't have $500 million to be able to spend on this sort of stuff. So how do we build things for them? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like just as hard of an engineering problem. So like with a satellite, you got to get everything right, because you put that on a rocket and it goes up into space and it has to work perfectly for like 20 years, right? And then with the stuff that we build now, like we're building electronics, but then we're putting it in the middle of a swamp or like in a rainforest that's like raining all the time, or places where like hyenas will chew on it. And like, so you have to like think about like all these crazy things so that you can put it out there and that it's not going to like just run out of batteries in 4 days and like everything you did like didn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So we think a lot about that sort of thing when we build things.
I can't help that. Like, what kind of pressure does that feel like when you're working on such a expensive project?
Yeah, I mean it's always a ton of pressure. I mean, one of the I remember I worked on 2 that actually exploded. The one was like early in my career, and I wasn't in the mission control when it actually happened, but the second one that happened was towards the end of my career, and my career there, and I was the lead propulsion person. So I was actually sitting behind the thing, and like they did the countdown, and we started seeing stuff like data come back, and about like 2 minutes later, it just like we couldn't see anything more. It just kind of disappeared. And it took like a long time. It was like maybe 4 hours of us sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, when they finally, like the mission director came in, and she's like, it blew up, it's done, and so like that's a crazy thing to like work on something for years, and then in 20 seconds it just becomes like a bunch of garbage.
Well, but at least there's not like a person inside,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and it doesn't like hurt anything. Everything basically burns up, but like the right afterwards, we're like we had basically gotten our lives ready for a month of just crazy schedules and like doing all this stuff, and so when she told us, we just all kind of packed things up and went out and drank our sorrows away.
Oh my goodness.
We didn't really have any other thing to do.
Well, not everything can be a raging success right at first. That's sort of just how things work.
AKA this podcast
we is like, I think you can't do the work that I do without failing. Yeah, literally constantly. So
yeah, Eric, I'm talking about this podcast.
Like, by the way, 2 weeks notice now. You said two. You altogether just two out of how many did you work on?
So there was 12 that I worked on.
That's good. That's good average.
Yeah.
I would say.
Not bad.
Man, but that how okay, so because I was kind of wondering in general, like what is like a timeline, like because I'm assuming from like the conception of like we need a whatever the idea is float out there, like hey, we have to get a satellite up there. How long is the actual timeline from like when they say okay, this project is beginning and when it actually goes up or it's considered quote unquote completed?
Yeah, I mean for the ones that we worked on, for the big ones, it was like 3 to 5 years basically.
Damn.
You would do like a lot of the work up front, and then there would be times where like work went down and you jump on another project, and so like you kind of like wait it out that way. But yeah, it's a long time for it to happen. And then you know the mission control is like a month, but that month's like crazy. It's you have to be at work from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. and then I go home and I sleep for 5 hours and I have to come back for another 3 hours, and then and it's just like all over the map. Like your schedule's like super screwed up. So
where was that? Where were you doing that at? Like
that was Boeing was where I worked, which was it's like right next to LAX. If you ever fly into LAX and see like all those Boeing buildings right there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what those are. Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy. So like that area, what was actually that satellite factory there was started by Howard Hughes in like the 60s.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so like they basically created the biggest satellite factory in the world, and then they like did a bunch of like they put something on the moon, they did a bunch of like the first communication satellite and all this sort of stuff. And for the longest time it was Hughes Space and Communications, and then like sometime in like the 90s or something, General Motors bought it, which is kind of weird, and then split it up into 3 pieces, and one piece went to Raytheon. The satellite piece that I worked for became Boeing, and then the last bit became DirecTV. So like that's where DirecTV came from, was that same
okay, that makes sense considering what they do. Okay, and so they launch right there in right next to LAX, or where do they launch actually at?
No, the ones I worked on launched out of like all sorts of different places. So they do the Russian ones launch out of Kazakhstan.
Okay.
And then the European ones launch out of French Guiana. And then a lot of ones just go out, like if you go like with SpaceX or something, it just goes out of Long Beach right here, and like they launch out of there. So
that's fucking crazy.
I just imagine the SpaceX one like one of those t-shirt shooters at a concert. And it's just going off like 24/7. It's just like, you did a satellite. You did a satellite.
So then go on.
Eric, did you have a further line of questioning?
No, but you go.
Okay. I did kind of want to know your opinion on like how many satellites are going up right now, and
great question.
What the effect that is having.
Yeah, I mean, I think like so people talk about this a lot, like it's getting cluttered up there and stuff, and I think when it comes to the stuff that I worked on, those were far enough out. They were like with the satellite, there's different orbits that they can sit in. And if you want it in the orbit that it's always facing the same side of the Earth, that's called geosynchronous, and that's the ones that I worked on. But there's like only a few slots of those. It's really hard to get them, and like so there's not a lot of ones out there. The ones that are like closer to Earth, the low Earth orbit ones, there's getting a lot of those. And like the problem is, if any of those stop working and they crash into each other, they turn into a bunch of debris, and like you'll have like something the size of a baseball that's now traveling at like 30,000 miles an hour or something, and if that hits another satellite, then it keeps on making more and more debris, and it can kind of like screw things up.
Wow. So we can't stop from littering anywhere.
No,
I was literally, when you were talking about it, I was thinking, I was like, it reminds me of like just like offshore anything, like putting our waste in places. It's like, oh, if we put it this far out, then we don't have to deal with it really, but then we can put it this far out and it'll eventually, and like, I don't know, it's it's part of like who we are, I guess, as a species. And I try personally not to separate human beings from nature, because I think that that's like incorrect. Just in It's not even an opinion. I just think it's weird to be like, oh, I don't believe we're extraterrestrials, but I do think that humans are separate from nature. It's like, okay, where do you think the separation is? Especially if you aren't religious. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
where do you think the separation comes from then? You know?
Especially since we know like other animals like can think the same ways we can't, I was reading this thing the other day and they're saying like, corvids, crows and stellar jays and those sorts of birds, ravens, like they can
The
actually like
gothest
plan.
birds.
Yeah, they like plan for the future. They're like, oh, winter is going to be cold, so I need to put these
Yeah.
things over here, and like they mourn for other dead crows and ravens. I mean, it's like it's like they have the same emotions and feelings that we do.
Yeah, they'll like give people gifts. They'll show emotion. I mean, there's so much evidence that to me it's like we have no further to look than most indigenous cultures as far as like some hard fucking truth bombs about who we are and what we have to do with our surroundings. And I do think that, yes, to an extent, there is a lot of misuse as far as like our talents and abilities as human beings being put to the wrong sort of agenda and creating things that aren't sustainable on the planet. But also people forget that like trees breathe our fucking waste breath, and like we go around and just naturally sort of pull old dead branches off of trees, and like mindlessly we'll do that, and like we affect our environment in positive ways too. And I think that there's a reason that humans have evolved to this like massive spread around our planet, and we don't even actually cover the most significant portion of our planet, the oceans. Like we're not even
Right.
the master of that
Right.
domain. We're just like shitting in it constantly, but we're not
Yeah.
actually like masters of that domain. We have
Terrible
birds
neighbors to that domain.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
anything else.
Yeah, horrible neighbors. Yeah.
not the
And
best neighbors.
we don't even make up like the most number of animals or
Yeah.
the highest mass, highest amount of animals by weight or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just like so small and insignificant. So
And yet our footprint is so like
we
felt
destroy it all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's I always thought it was funny growing up when people would be like, save Earth, like save planet Earth. And I'm like, it's not, Earth will be fine. It's humans. We should be concerned about humans. So what do you think is the solution, Shah?
Yeah, I mean,
Mankind actually asked that you come on to save us all. Morgan Freeman, as the president in Deep Impact, has requested this.
Right. Yeah. Now, I mean, I think, first we have to get the worst environmental president in the history of the U.S. out of office.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a step number one. Now, I mean, there's, it's crazy actually. When he got elected, there was in the conservation space, there was like all this like philanthropy going towards cool projects, and they were like supporting indigenous communities doing conservation and all this sort of stuff all over the world. And then Trump gets elected, and like a bunch of those foundations, everyone's just like, we can't do any of that shit anymore. We just have to make sure like we don't let him damage things any further. And he's still fucked up a bunch of stuff. So I think that's like a first thing we have to do, is like we have to start actually talking about climate change in a way that it's not like this kind of mythical demon that it's like a real fucking thing that like we're experiencing.
I mean, it's scary when one of the when someone is about to be potentially sworn in as one of the justices, and they're saying that climate change is something that they just haven't seen enough data on. It's frightening when you hear that. And it can be whatever you want to say. I mean, with Trump, it's just like,
bitch, what are you reading?
Yeah. With
highlights?
With Trump, it's like, at the very least, you could be like, well, he's just a heartless businessman who that's all he knows is like how to like continue business in whatever way. And like he is in bed with businesses that they just have to say fuck you to the environment, so to speak. and he understands that. What's scary is the people like Amy who, and I can't say for sure, but I have to. There's some people where there it is genuine naivety or ignorance on the situation, and
Yeah.
they think that it's a scam essentially.
Yeah, I mean, she's not a dumb person though. Like you would think that, like,
Yeah,
I mean, when somebody who's smart like that makes those decisions, it just, it makes me think that they're serving other masters, right? Like they have people
I would
telling
have.
them that this is how they need to act about that.
It's what I hope, but it trickles down though because there eventually it does hit a mass a part of our population that don't know that and don't recognize that to
Yeah.
them because it's what they're being fed. You know what I mean? And that's the
Yeah.
part that scares me is when there's such a large number that tie in their politics with environmentalism, and they say like it frightens me for sure.
Well,
Right.
so
Yeah. Go ahead.
what I was just gonna say though is that I think that there's actually like a large field of opportunity for people to come together across parties and in a way that is, apolitical as people want it so desperately to be when it comes to environmentalism. Because at the end of the day, I do think that there are so many people that are like landowning people and that make their
Right.
profits off of land and make their profits off of agriculture and things that are affected by the way these, political okay, but honestly both political parties make their profits, and neither one of them are really out for the common good of those, people. So I don't fucking know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. Like, the environment, national parks, things like that didn't used to be a partisan issue, right? That was
Yeah,
like, Republicans, like, for a long time very much
yeah,
pushed those sorts of ideas forward, which is
yeah.
like great. That's the way it should be. We should all think Yosemite and Yellowstone and all these places are like very special, and we should keep them and support them and do the things we need to do to make sure they're pristine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's okay. So I remember where the fuck I was going with that. I'm gonna pick up the balls again. So I think like what's interesting is you can affect change in such a dramatic way from such small actions, and I think that's part of what you're doing as far as like making things more accessible to communities that might not have the access with really simple solutions that are simple for here, for us people with that have these tools and technology at their disposal and use them for dumb things like getting tacos, and you can like bring them to a community that's like, oh, we actually have access to like healthcare or like water for the, or whatever it is. And so my example personally was that I remember very specifically there was a time when I was living in Los Angeles, and I lived kind of like along this stretch of freeway but up on a hill, and the piece of land I was on was really beautiful. But I remember like my friend lived right down the street, and it was a big major street, and it was like it could have been such a nice walk to her house, but it was just covered in trash, like just
Mm.
always covered in garbage. And it was like along a major highway, and it just like I never liked walking down there. And so I like organized this thing with my friends, and I like made a Facebook invite and made a bunch of my friends come, and I bought them gloves and garbage bags, and I was like, let's clean up the trash between our houses, and then we can hang out and I won't feel like a trash person walking to your house. And we did it one day, and it was super, I don't know if it was fun. I enjoyed it. But what's
Yeah.
crazy is that whole stretch along there, I can still drive by. There's never been trash there again. And some of the
Mm.
trash was from like years ago,
Oh yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not only that, but people cleaned up other sides of the hills, and like people didn't stop like depositing trash there. So there is something about like, if you can do something, do
Yeah.
something. If you can pick up that piece of plastic. So I was wondering if you had anything to speak on as far as like ways that I know the people that listen to our podcast are insanely compassionate and wonderful people and are probably always looking for ways that they can do more. So if you have any
Yeah.
insights or ways that you think people can actively participate in conservation, would I invite you to do so.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's a really, really good point. Like the people who helped you with that cleanup, or even people who maybe drive past that area every day and they notice that, they probably made different decisions. They probably still are making different decisions about like the ways they litter, or the things that they buy, just because they see things like that. I think that sort of thing is really important. So like, one of the easiest ways to kind of help out with conservation stuff is just through volunteering your time, and there's lots of NGOs that just need help, and they don't really have the money or the budget to be able to do it. And so one of the things that like I talk a lot about when people are interested in this is like, everybody who's listening to this, you guys here, like you all have like skills and things really how to do really well, right? Things that maybe if you did that for a conservation organization could actually help them get their message out, or like become more effective at certain things. And so like it's basically what I did, right? I took my understanding of how technology is put together, and I said at first I was like, I'm going to volunteer with these conservation organizations, and I'm going to like help them think through these ideas. And like that just gained enough momentum that I was able to start my own nonprofit that does that sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of space in that, to do interesting stuff. The other thing I would say is there's this thing called citizen science, if you haven't heard of it before, but it's basically like the idea that like there's all part of the reason why we don't make good conservation decisions or science decisions is because we just don't have enough information, right? Because like all the information has to be collected by a small group of scientists, or it requires expensive equipment, or all this sort of stuff. And so this whole field of citizen science came up. It was like, how do we use things like smartphones, so it disappeared, smartphones, and like other stuff to like to engage other people in being able to do this sort of thing. And like whatever it is you're interested in, if you're interested in like like you can work on a citizen science project with SETI if you want to see if there's extraterrestrial life out there, right? Or you can work on a project around like penguins if you want to help people like find penguins in photographs and things like that. One of my favorite ones in that space is an app you can download called iNaturalist. And so the cool thing about that is like like basically the way scientists know what animals are out there is they do like this assessment of the biodiversity. They basically go out and they count the insects they see or the birds that they see and all this stuff, and they say, okay, we saw this many, so we can assume that this area has this number of species and blah blah blah. But iNaturalist is an app that if you're ever like walking around and you see a cool plant or a cool bird, you can snap a picture of it and
Right.
upload it, and scientists will like say, oh, that's whatever, Australius ithacus,
Yes.
or some kind of random thing.
I literally remember like when apps first started being a thing, being like, I cannot wait until I can identify plants with an app. And I know that'll be a thing eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's cool. And so there's so like you could do this with iNaturalist, and it's kind of cool. They do it with students where all the kids are like going around snapping pictures of bugs and birds and stuff. But like the cool thing is iNaturalist also came out with this other app called Seek, which is like my favorite thing in the world. And it is exactly what you say. So like if you're ever like, I don't know what kind of bug this is, you like literally open up the app and it's just the camera, and it uses like artificial intelligence and like machine learning, and it says that's a stink bug, or that's a brown widow, or whatever it is. Yeah. It tells you immediately, which is like super super cool.
Speaking of bugs, for the listener at home, Eric is in a like mortal fucking battle with the fly.
It's not just one, but it's two, and like it's so funny because of the like subject matter being spoken on, and like there's a small part of me that's kind of like thinking right now like fuck nature, fuck animals and bugs and everything. These two flies will not leave me alone as we're recording. They keep like they're doing little kamikaze attacks on my lip and. Oh my god, it's driving me insane. It's like Walter White in that one episode when the flies in the meth lab with them. I'm just like losing my goddamn marbles over this thing. Anyway, Zen, I have to master the art of like mind over fly. So what were we talking about?
I could tell a fly story.
Yes, please.
So this background behind me is the last place that I went before COVID happened, and so we have a project in in Cameroon in the Congo
Ah.
Basin in Central Africa.
You've been to so many cool different fucking places. I'm so jealous.
Yes, pretty fun. And so this area, you know, we did a bunch of work there, but they have in that entire region, they have these things called sweat bees, which are like they're not like bees that can sting you, but they're very small. So they and uh, they're called sweat bees because they like to eat the sweat that's on you. And so when you're walking through this jungle at certain times of day, you will have like 450 of them on you at one time, and they're like climbing in your ears and your nose and your mouth. It's just like absolutely the most annoying thing you can ever imagine, and you just have to like just power through it when it's happening. You can't do anything about it because they're just relentless, always coming.
So
that is truly gross.
I am kind of curious now, like on the more like explorer side of things, what's been like one of like the scariest or like weirdest thing that you've had to encounter that they warned you about, like when you were kind of traipsing about like Botswana or Kazakhstan or wherever you might have been? Like what was like a certain animal or insect where they're like, hey, by the way, this thing burrows into your heart if like you don't like say something?
If you ever heard about like some sort of paranormal skinwalker type.
Ooh, even better, yeah. Some like Cameroon version of the chupacabra or something.
Yeah. I would say like for me, like the most kind of hectic stuff that I've gotten into was in Botswana, Namibia, Angola. And I was just like, basically during that time I was charged by anything you can imagine, like elephants charging me, like but the scariest one out of anything you can out there is hippos. So like, you know, hippos are just absolutely like, I've never seen something go from being like the most tired, sleepiest thing you've ever seen in your entire life to like literally being the angriest, most pissed off, wants to kill you thing than like a hippo before. And it's just, it's absolutely, like when we were in Botswana, we were in these canoes, and we're like going through the water in these canoes, and you would see them, and they would just charge into the water. And sometimes you'd be in the water, and they when they charge you when they're in the water, you can find videos of this on YouTube. It's terrifying, but they will drop to the bottom, and they'll run across the bottom of the water, and you can actually see all you see is this like wave that's coming towards you.
That's fucking crazy.
It's absolutely terrifying. It's crazy.
They don't eat people, do they?
No, but they will bite the shit. I mean, like
they just want to like
they
attack
will like
them.
kill
They're
you.
just like, ah!
I do know from
they're like super territorial.
Yeah.
I do know from the Disney land Jungle Cruise ride that they are very dangerous. Be wary of when the bubbles show up, because that.
Oh my God, Eric, you would be a really great Jungle Cruise director.
That was my dream job, and like still is.
I can totally see
the
you
cap gun. Pow! Oh no! Watch out, guys.
No, I can totally see you having your own zingers that you happily do 45 times a day. Yeah. For 4 months straight, and then you change them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am curious though, now that Caitlin asked the question, did you ever go anywhere and like was told about like a local sort of like paranormal thing or superstitious thing that you were kind of like, even a scientist like yourself, you still were like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I never really encountered that, I would say, anywhere. We do a lot of work with like indigenous groups, and so I've heard stories, but not any stories that are more kind of paranormal, more so just like like legends and stories of their culture in terms of like how the area was formed where we're at and things like that. And then also like shared weird meals with them. So I've eaten very strange stuff.
Ooh, like what?
I was in Peru in the Amazon, and they have this like liquor that they make by like chewing on something and then spitting in this like jar for a long time, and it turns into this liquor. And so I drank that. I drank that with them. I've eaten like I ate a fruit bat in Palau, which was like crazy. I've eaten a bunch of different types of insects all over. And it's always in these situations. So it's not, I'm not like necessarily like an adventurous eater. I'm
Yeah.
basically a vegetarian, but like when you go out into these things and like you meet with like the village elder, or like
Right.
you're in
Respect.
this, you're in a situation where you kind of have to eat what they give
Yeah.
you.
Politeness.
So, yeah. The one caveat is if I know it's like a really endangered species, I just won't eat it. So I've turned down some things that I know are endangered.
There's
It's interesting.
Go on.
I was just gonna say this is kind of a non sequitur, so I don't want to necessarily step on anything you were about to say based on that.
Well, I was mainly I was just curious. There's like 196, 195 countries, I guess, if you consider Vatican, whatever. How many? Because I'm assuming you probably have tracked now at this point. What number are you up to at this point?
That's a good question. I think I'm in the 40s.
Oh. I always, with how many you were listing off just now, I was like expecting like you were already like up to like fucking like the 90s or something.
No, I wish that'd be amazing, but no, I think I'm maybe in the high 40s or low 50s, 52 or something like that.
That's still so fucking like I'm insanely jealous.
Yeah.
Where like how you've gotten to explore a lot of like cool different places? Is there any like dream spots you have yet to go to, like for the purposes of what you do specifically that you want to go to?
I mean, there's a ton. I would, yeah. I mean, I'd go anywhere. I would love to see like Iceland. That's one place that I've always wanted to go. I would love to go to the highlands in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country that I really wanted to go. We had a project for a while that we were working on with somebody, and then kind of COVID and everything happened. But like, that would give me the opportunity to go to Antarctica. I've never gone to Antarctica, and that's like where I would love to go, because it's like super hard to get to Antarctica, and it costs a lot of money unless you go in with scientists. Then you can actually just like fly in on a military plane and stuff. So.
Oh shit. Caitlin, non sequitur moment.
So it's just interesting because when you were talking about sort of like these different technologies that people are now almost like crowdsourcing for information that was kind of previously unavailable to larger organizations that were built towards conservation. Honestly, it reminds me of like the true crime world, how like things like 23andMe popped up and suddenly like we can solve all these fucking cold cases. And so it just like kind of got my gears turning about how like, and even with things in the arts like music, like so much is accessible, like as far as technology, like it's almost like a magic trick, like bringing something super simple into a world that already exists that like expands that world, like provides all these new doors and opportunities. So it's not so much a question as just me thinking about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome.
Thoughts?
Like it's honestly it's like opened up the floodgates of like anybody to be able to work on these sorts of things. And one of the things that like a lot of things that the reason why I'm excited about the stuff that I do is that like I'll talk to scientists in I don't know, Southeast Asia or something, like, and they're just like, okay, well, we want to study. Their backyard is like one of the most amazing biodiversity hotspots in the world. And they're like, we would love to do this sort of work, but like if I want to buy one sensor or one tag to put on an animal, previously those sorts of things cost like $5,000 or something US, for them to do that thing. And that's like the cost of that's what they get as a salary in a year or something, right? So it just doesn't make sense. And then what we do is like, we find that technology, or we get it, we take it apart, we're like, all right, this is like fucking $150 worth of parts, so let's just re-engineer it, right? So we re-engineer it and we make something that's like, they can buy, they can get access to it, right? And so like then they don't have to ask for $5,000, they ask for $300, and they can end up like doing some sort of research that they weren't able to do before. And then like if you make everything open source, then people can even like take the plans and build that shit themselves if they want. And that's like kind of our mission. It's like, let's just make it so everybody can do this stuff as easily as they want, and there's no more like gatekeepers at like Stanfords and Yales and Harvards of the world, right?
Right, that are like, this technology would be better used selling advertisements to leggings companies from China.
Yeah.
owned by people in Belgium.
It's the most annoying thing too. Is like you go to Silicon Valley and there's like so many smart people and they're just like working on like giving you better Instagram ads. Like it's so fucking stupid. Like if we had all these smart people doing something better, like we could solve all the problems in this planet. You know?
Yeah, well, that's, I think, a really big part of reworking our economic system going forward in the future. I don't think I hate the whole like it's either capitalism or socialism. Like, okay, both of those concepts were invented too long ago with nothing to do with anything that's going on in the world anymore. And, money is imaginary. It's completely fucking imaginary at this point. It's not based on anything that actually exists. It was at one point. It is no longer is. It's sort of there for the taking of, as our president has proven, there for the taking of people that just feel like they deserve it the most, and everything's completely off kilter in that system. And there's nothing in our economic system, at least in America, that is fundamentally based on the common good having any actual value in the equation.
Right.
So
it's crazy.
Nothing gets calculated with that variable in it because it's not a variable. So of course the common good is fucked right now, because a few people have just been like, we're going to make as much money as we possibly can. And that's all well and fucking good. But also at the end of the day, like, we are a society that has to learn how to live together and work together and benefit from one another. And I think it's bullshit that we fundamentally just like are at war with our surroundings and we're bad for the environment and we're always going to be violent and we're always like, let's just fucking stop being like, we've always been this way, so that's how we have to be forever. That's your trauma talking, bitches. Move forward, pick up your trash.
Yeah, it's messed up. It's like with COVID. Like like the billionaires got like something like $700 billion richer or something.
Yeah,
where it's like you have like tens of millions of people that just went below the poverty line at the same time. Like that's so messed up. So messed up.
It's going to be really fascinating to see how it does actually end up coming apart, because I think it's completely inevitable that it will, but it's going to be probably a really slow process, just the same as it was to build the whole system. So who knows what we'll see of it in our lifetimes. But anyway, Eric, you have some fun quizzes.
I do, actually. We did good eye. Cowboy, we did get to the hour mark, so we got some quizzes for you coming up here. The first one, I'm going to quickly shoot you over in the Zoom a picture that you'll need in a second for. But my friend, right now we are going to play Could You Be a Rocket Scientist? That's right. You might have gone to school for it. You might have, shot up the satellites and all that, but you haven't taken our quiz yet, so we'll be the judge of this. All right, are you ready, sir?
Yeah.
Have you ever conducted, and most of these are multiple choice, have you ever conducted a scientific experiment? Yes. No. Does Mentos and Coke count?
Yes, I have.
All right. Are you good with numbers? Not really. Sure. Num what?
I would say sure. That's a sure.
All right. All right, here we go. Here is our picture one. I'm going to shoot you quickly over into the Zoom chat, sir, if you wouldn't mind, just real quickly. Going to this link I'm going to send you right now, which will give you an image. And the question for this one is this rocket okay to launch?
Let's see. Let's open it up somewhere. I have 1,000 tabs that are now opening up. Oh, is that one okay to launch? Yeah, that's the best one to launch right there.
Is it? Okay. All right. Your answer's multiple choice.
Wait.
No.
I'm not sure I have a visual on that one.
Did you click the link that I sent in the chat?
Yeah, no, as a listener though.
Oh, yeah.
they can see it on the YouTube thing. I showed it on the YouTube.
Oh, okay, well, I guess fuck you to all our Spotify listeners.
What? We can't please everyone, Caitlin. All I can do is say it's a rocket.
It's a rocket.
My favorite Elton John song. It's a rocket. Is this rocket okay to launch? Your choices, sir, is no, yes, or how should I know?
I would say definitely yes.
All right. What were you so confident about? What you saw and you were immediately like, yes, that's the best fucking rocket.
Because that's the rocket that took us to the moon. That's a Saturn V.
Oh, you fucking know your rockets, sir. I just for all
yeah.
I knew, it was a painting or something. I'm over
Yeah,
here.
I mean, I think it is a painting of one, but
Which city is nicknamed Rocket City, USA? Orlando, Houston, or Huntsville?
Oh, that's actually a good question. That I don't know the answer to, but I'm gonna guess Huntsville.
Are those? I'm assuming those are 3 launch cities. Well, Houston Rockets
Yeah, I mean,
are the sports team, but
yeah. Well, Orlando is outside of Cape Canaveral.
yeah.
And then Houston is where Johnson Space Center is. And then Huntsville is like randomly like a big NASA center. So there's like the university there has always been really big in aerospace, and there's a bunch of aerospace stuff in that area.
All right. Well, we'll see. We haven't got past the test yet. We'll see.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. Don't get too cocky, all right?
What is the duration of a year on Mercury? Mercury. Why do I say it like that? Mercury. 365 days, 122 days, or 88 days?
I'm going to say 88.
He's going with 88, folks. What country sent the first man to space? England, USA, or Russia?
Before you answer this, I'm sorry, but I just read an article. Apparently, France sent a cat to space.
Yeah.
And it just like orbited Earth and then came back. And they had a photo of it, and the cat was just like, like it was so upset.
Can I see that face again? I didn't get to see it in the chat. One more time. What was the cat like? It's a very French-looking cat. Maybe that's how the cat always looks. A French cat's just kind of always pissed off and smoking a cigarette.
I was gonna say for the listener at home, it's smoking a cigarette.
Oh yeah, what's that YouTube thing with like the cat that's like
Henri the
dramatic?
cat. That's my favorite one, where it's like black
So
and
funny.
white and it's the French cat.
Yeah.
Like subtitled, and it's Henri the cat.
I think you told me about this. I've yet to see this.
did.
I'll have to investigate this this cat. Which country was it though?
Russia, USSR.
Ooh. Back in the USSR. Okay, what was the name of the first artificial Earth satellite ever to orbit Earth? Alpha, Sputnik, or Lucky Star?
Sputnik.
Lucky Star. In 2003.
She's so lucky. She's a star.
But
she
cries, and lonely heart.
If there's nothing missing in my life, then
why
do
these tears come at night? You're welcome.
Go on.
2003.
Continue.
In 2003, scientists decided which celestial object was not really a planet: Pluto, Mars, or Uranus.
It's definitely Pluto.
Oh, yeah. Big old debate about that one. Or was there? Only time will tell at the end of this quiz. What happens when sodium mixes with water? Nothing happens. It explodes or it glows.
Ooh.
Sodium, I think, explodes. I should know this. I went to school for chemical engineering. This is like something I should
Keeps getting more and more impressive.
Yeah, this was a quiz written by a teenager on the internet in the 2000s. So
Very true.
Nice.
We see you, Xander Hurst,
Thank
who
you,
created this
Xander.
one. Are you a patient person? Yes, very much. I can be sometimes, or not at all.
I would say I can be sometimes.
All right. There's even little dots like it can be sometimes.
There you go. Dot, dot, dot.
All right, let's calculate these results. Oh my goodness. It straight up says you have the skills. You have the perfect potential to become an award-winning scientist. Way to go.
God.
You are smart,
Nice.
patient, driven, and above all, you are creative.
We think you should go. We think you should go for it.
Yeah, I think this is my calling right there.
Yeah.
I took the quiz earlier, and I did not.
It was like, can you focus until the end of this quiz?
It literally was something like, maybe you could do something creative instead. So Xander has a real boner for creative things in this thing. Whatever. You know what? I don't need to be. I a podcast host. There's only what, like 200,000 of them this year alone. All right, we got one other quiz for you, sir. You down for a little bit more clown?
Sure, yeah. Let's go.
Hell yeah. This one, I did ask you, we reached out to you earlier today to find out what were some of your favorite scary stories, scary movies rather, get a little ahead of myself on my shows. And one of them you said was a little movie by the name of Silence of the Lambs. So
Yeah.
we're going to play a little game called Can You Survive a Dinner with Hannibal Lecter?
Wait, and this is the music from Bowser's Castle, right? From Super Mario.
What? Yeah, it's from Super Mario. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It is cool.
I think it's cool.
Oh, no, I'm just kidding. All right, so are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so the basic premise of this is that Hannibal Lecter invited you over for an evening of whining and dining. And I'm going to give you a couple scenarios, and if you answer correctly, you continue on into the night, safe and sound. But if you answer any of these incorrectly or go with the wrong option, Hannibal is going to take a bite out of you. And, you only get so many bites until you're dead. So let's try to survive this. Are you ready, sir?
Sure, yes.
And by the way, Shah, before we begin, and to the listeners at home, it's important you should know that Eric executes these quizzes on a legal pad.
That is very true.
This is not sourced on the internet. This is Eric reading off of a legal pad that he probably works on his lunch break from work. So I just want to preface this whole thing.
Now I feel seen. My boss should take a note from you. All right. Are you ready, sir? Let's do this. All right, first of all, you arrive to Hannibal Lecter's abode, and you step through the doorway, and Hannibal offers to take your coat. Do you accept?
No.
Correct. You don't want if he had taken that coat, he would have had like that prime neck real estate, a lot of like open areas. You're already doing real great, sir. You get a check mark on that yellow legal pad. He notices your class ring. Oh my goodness. He wants to get a little bit of a closer look at it. Do you present your class ring to Hannibal Lecter?
Definitely not.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. He's actually offended
no.
by that. I mean, no coat, no ring. You can't just like go in there and be all like that. Sorry, sir. 1X. It's all good. I'm sorry. I should explain. You get 4. Every bite is a whole limb. He just ate your limb of choice. But you only get 4 limbs before that. Then you're dead. So
You got 3 left.
and they're the whatever ones that you choose. So here we go. Mr. Lecter wants you to sniff his 67 cab. Oh, boy. Do you?
Yeah.
Hell
Eric,
yeah, you do.
What
Yeah?
a weird
Nice.
question, by the way.
I don't know. Isn't that what fucking rich ass that's like what they do in Frasier and shit, right? They sniff
Yeah.
wine?
Just weird that you pulled that for this.
Thank you. All right. You mentioned that you enjoy classical music while Mr. Lecter is in the kitchen, finishing up a little bit of some stuff in there. He calls out to you, what is one of your favorite composers? How do you respond?
Oh God. Do I have to name a composer?
You do.
Um, I'm just gonna go real basic with this. Mozart.
Hell yeah. You know what? He's
Nice.
actually a fan. Hey, the classics are
Nice.
classics for a reason. Doing good
Shah,
here.
I have to work with this person like constantly.
Hannibal asked for your help cutting onions. Or no, I'm sorry. I fucked up. He asked for your help in the kitchen. You have two different choices. You can either cut onions or you can peel carrots. Which one do you choose?
Choose the onions.
You went with onions?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You cut your finger and like a shark, you know, like when they throw the chum into the water. It's
Yeah.
just Lecter. He's just, you know, you can peel a carrot, but you know, onions, they're a little tricky.
Sure.
I'm so sorry.
I thought it would be a repellent, the sharp onion. Would make him cry.
Not for that madman, the devious Mr. Lecter, Dr. Lecter. In fact, I think he has his doctorate. Oh my goodness. All right, it's time to eat. Do you serve Hannibal or do you let Hannibal serve you?
I let him serve me.
Absolutely. If you were to serve him, your hand would have been out there. He would have grabbed it. You would have ate it. Oh my goodness. We cannot allow that to happen. No, sir. Not at this fine dining. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much praise do you heap upon the dish to Lecter? Like if you're there right now, because it's good. Let's not lie. It's good. But how much? Like on scale of 1 to 10. 10 being like obnoxiously like, oh my God, like fucking kill me now. Don't say that to him. But like anything else, like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And 1 being like stone face, stoic, like, are you even eating?
Yeah. I think I would maybe go with a solid 8.5.
Hell yeah. He
Nice.
is, above all else, he is very much ego driven. And I feel like that half, like that just keeps it from going too far over. He otherwise it would have been like, you know, parody, and he would have seen right through that, and he would have bit you. So you might make it out of this alive. It is time for dessert. Do you go with tiramisu or creme brulee?
Creme brulee.
Man, I can't believe you didn't go with those lady fingers. They're so delicious. That was my own personal one. That's not even have to do with Hannibal, but you're losing a limb on that one. Okay, so you finished your
I have one left?
Yeah, you have one left.
Okay.
You finished your meal. You finished your dessert. He offers you a nightcap. Do you accept?
No.
That's right. You know what he was trying to get into. All right. Trying to get into that flesh. So the last question. Here we are, sir. You're so close. You did have a little bit too much of that 67 cab, if that's a real thing. And, you know, you're feeling a little tipsy. Do you let Hannibal give you a ride? Do you walk home? Or do you call an Uber?
Call an Uber.
That's right. Oh, my goodness. You did it, sir. That's right. Ubers. You know, we're helping people out right now. People are out of work. And an Uber, that's just one small step in helping your community. So, well done. You made it, Shah. So far, we've had
Always
two
the
people
responsible choice. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Eric,
That was
a single limb.
It was an awkward Uber ride, but
we didn't tell you you'd have a good life after this quiz.
I guess that would be traumatic after that point. But you survived. So, you know, it's one of those things. It's like that movie 127 Hours or whatever, Franco, about that real guy. It's like I'm sure that guy respected life or some shit afterwards.
You know, I gotta ask, if you had to only keep one limb, which one would it be?
I would probably pick my right hand.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because then I could do stuff. Like I feel like if I had like my left leg, then
You'd still have a punching arm. You'd still
yeah.
fight people off. All right. Well, on that note, this has been a really beautiful episode of Goth Yearbook After Hours.
Hell yeah.
Eric.
Yeah, no, it's been great.
I am honestly tired of hearing your voice. So Shah.
Dang.
Thank you for enduring that quiz, and I really hope you decide to pursue rocket science in the future. Sounds like you'd be really great at it. If people want to find you or get involved in something, if you have something you would like to plug, please do so after the tone.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you can find I Twitter a lot, so at Shah Selbe on Twitter, and then Instagram, because I do photography as well, is at SSELBE. And then if you're interested in kind of playing around with some of the tech that we build, I'd say check out fieldkit.org. That's kind of where we've been putting a lot of like the newer stuff, and it's meant to be accessible to anybody. So,
hell yeah,
awesome. Well,
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Thank you for, saving the world. I feel like after tonight you succeeded. Thank you for regaling us with tales and taking all our quizzes. We can't thank you enough. And Caitlin, as always, thank you for being the co-host of the Mo-host. I'm going to say goodnight, guys. Good night, guys.
All right, good night.